Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Insight series with me, Chris Fordham, for the Light Review. Earlier on today, I was talking to Sacha from WSP. He is Head of Architectural Lighting there. So thanks to Sacha for giving up your time. He's certainly got loads of these transport interchanges under his belt. If you've been in London, then you would have been in his station, so to speak, where he's worked his magic. So sit back and enjoy. There's loads of tips for anyone starting out or those maybe who are a little bit longer in the tooth. So, Sacha, we're looking at transport interchanges. Those designers just started out, or even those who have never worked in the field. How do you approach the lighting? And what are your guiding principles? I mean, something like they're like modern day cathedrals, gateways to our cities, and they're the first places you see, aren't they, when you come to a city? I mean, so they have to be eye catching. But how would you recommend for those designers? What are the guiding principles that you'd give?
I mean, hi, Chris. Yeah, that's an interesting question. In order for a young person that start on these projects, they need to actually really understand what are the needs, what is the brief, what's the client needs, the architect's vision, what are they trying to create? Because these spaces are, they're quite, you could say, high risk areas in terms of, things, it's a station. End of the day, there's a train going to be arriving at a platform. So it's, the youngsters need to understand the risks associated with these areas as well. And yeah, I think that's definitely something that youngsters need to start understanding when they come onto these type of projects, understand what are the risks, how things are maintained as well. Maintenance is very important. Anyone can put a light anywhere, let's say.
And they have done, haven't they? I've seen some great ones.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely there's some of the, you could say, substances or, minerals, you could say, that a young person needs to first take in as when they start working on these projects, understanding, because at the end of the day, the station, it's been, we're lighting it for people. So it's, understanding the activities in various areas. But yeah, no, it's a very exciting, we could say.
Yeah, because actually stations are almost like organic beasts, aren't they? Because they're living and breathing elements in a way, because people are within them all the time. So it's not like a static thing like an office.
No, it's almost like, yeah, you're right. It's almost like a 24/7 operation. It's not just the commuters, it's maintenance staff in these buildings or spaces. It's never ending. Minute when there's the last train service, let's say at 1 or 2 in the morning, then it's the operations, the staff that have to come in to then sweep, clean these spaces, floors getting cleaned. And yeah, you could rightly say it's never stopped breathing endlessly.
Actually, and thinking about it, I mean, London isn't renowned for not having a drinking culture. So I'm just thinking, you're saying about the safety element, but I don't think you couldn't even put it into words, could you? What a pre-Christmas celebration at the office in London, and the devastation after these office parties. I don't even know if they have that in the rest of Europe. It's just it's like carnage, isn't it? And how you have to. There's certain things you can't do, obviously, but I mean, the amount of drunk people you'd see around Christmas, the lighting has to be spot on. I mean, because they're just off their nuts, aren't they? Unfortunately, that's just a different amount of people there, and football fans going up there all excited about the game and whatnot. So it's just a plethora of different peoples and actions, and
so yeah, exactly that. And those are some of the scenarios that we've got to start thinking about when we're designing. If we've got a crowd coming in, a swarm, it's like, how does the lighting work when you're in different scenarios? Is there enough coverage for CCTV that it picks up people? So it's kind of like we've got to kind of like close out every type of element of what if something happens. Let's say, example, if there's an emergency, we need to evacuate the station. it's almost thinking of those type of things. Are the signs enough lit that people know where to go? These are some of the things that definitely needs picked up during the thought
That's
process.
interesting, actually. So what do? Do you just start off with a list, like I suppose, like an emergency list? You start off with a list and you have to go through one individually, saying, "Oh, we've done this, we've done that, we've covered this." And
Yeah.
where does that come from? Is that like the fire safety officer, or is that yourselves?
So we work with the fire safety officers. We work with the stakeholders. We work with the operations. We first understand what it is, what is the need of the client first, and then understand the environment, the space that we're working in, and then using guidance of the standards. And it's not just lighting. We're like I was saying, we're working with the fire engineers. We're working with the stakeholders. We're understanding, what is the brief, and then from there, it's kind of understanding what issues may be raised and what things that do need to be covered.
So I guess you have a checklist, right? And you go through each one and you tick one off and say, we've covered that, covered this.
Yeah, it's almost like you're starting basis of the standards, and we're kind of using the British standards or from the rail standards or network rail standards. And there is a guidance there, but it's kind of using that guidance then to inform the design as well. So it's not almost like it's kind of, I don't call it like a checklist. It's almost like a designer's, you could say a thinking list rather than a checklist.
Bible almost, which coming from an atheist is quite a big thing to say.
Yeah.
So actually, when you've already answered my question, I was going to ask again, which is how often you refer to like guides like LG15, because it's a practical environment, isn't it? And these guides are super important. But how does the architecture of the building influence the daylight component? And how, as a designer, do you work within this framework? Because the weird thing about stations is that they are in daytime, used in daytime as well. But I guess the lighting's on all the time, isn't it? More or less, how do you take that into account?
So I mean, when it comes to designing stations, for me, it's about simplicity, about the lighting within the space. And when I'm designing, I'm trying to use like the least amount of, let's say, types of luminaires, because again, it all goes down to maintenance, carbon. If we can do less, it's kind of doing more. And then, as you're saying, with the daylighting, it's 100% daylight is so important. Where we have sensors, daylight sensors, where we don't want the lights on during the daytime. So during the day, the platform lighting should be off. So that's something where we get involved in the lighting control system. Let's say the station's closed, it's not operation at night, for instance, as well. Then the light levels don't need to be on 100% on. There's no trains, there's no one on the platform, so the lights can even dim. So it's always using daytime and night to try and find ways of saving energy. And I think that's really important as well. And also, like, if there's daylight, the lights don't need to be on. And we're also keeping the longevity of the LEDs as well in the luminaires.
How do you actually have an input on the architecture when you're starting a project? I mean, for those that don't know, you did London Bridge, and I use that station quite often.
Yeah.
So I cast my eye over it and think, oh, Sacha did that. Is that all right? And I think, yeah, that's all right. I like that. That's good. I think quite often you'd like to be able to have an influence on the architecture as well.
Yeah.
Do you have that possibility, or?
Yeah, of course. So it's almost like collaborating with the architect, understanding their vision, and then obviously there's always things can work that can't work. So similar projects as well, where we're working on it, instance for Euston and Old Oak Common, it's like we've been there from the start of the project, and then at that point we're sitting together brainstorming, and obviously my mindset is with the client and with the maintainers while sitting with the architects. So I'm trying to understand what the vision is and to see, well, is this going to satisfy expectation of others? Plus how we integrate it with the architecture as well at the same time. So, we could get a concourse and just throw 3 or 4 different ideas together. and then it's kind of doing pros and cons of each option. It could be energy, maintenance, and then how does that, enhance the space? Because that's also what the lighting is doing, is how is it enhancing, how is it integrated with the architecture? Are we using, how is it maintained? How is it mounted? How is it fixed? And this is all part of the architecture. And actually the lighting actually becomes part of the architecture.
But basically, when I did the project with Zaha Hadid, there was a strange moment where the architect was super functioned on the aesthetic, and that's really what their focus was. They'd done the hard bit, and now they were focusing on the aesthetic. But because a train station or an underground station is so much about the functionality and stopping people, to be frank, walking onto the tracks and basically hurting themselves. And the thing I think we have to remember is not everyone has the same capabilities when it comes to vision and stuff, do they? I mean, when you get older, I'm sure it's not helpful when people are partially sighted. So the architect had this vision. He said, don't want any lights before the track. I said, well, that's something you have to have because you need the contrast. So I suppose when approaching these projects, the most important elements to consider would be the safety, wouldn't it? But have you got any similar experiences of where you're talking to the architect and they want something that is really impossible to do, but you basically have to talk them out of it? Or
I mean, there was one architect at one point, they wanted to bend the light, almost have like a secondary mirror, but it was like, I can't have a concourse here and a light over here, and then you want me to bend the light. That's not going to work. So I had to try and explain that to them, that you can't bend light. But definitely, I mean, when we're working on these things, I do look at the functional lighting as more of being a feature lighting. I think the functional lighting is the feature lighting. So that's how my mindset is, that actually the functional lighting is the feature lighting. So it's how you make the functional lighting to be the decorative, integrative element. As I was saying, it needs to be integrated into the architecture. So how do you beautify the functional lighting?
That's interesting. Yeah, because I saw at London Bridge, you've got the uplights, haven't you, with the pillars as you go down the concourse.
Yeah.
So
I mean, originally that scheme was to have it wall mounted and have a light sticking out off, and it was like, well, actually, wouldn't it look better if it's actually integrated within the quads? Yeah, so that was an interesting one as well, and especially that area as well. It's a retail area, so it was kind of trying, how do you make that area into more pleasing atmosphere, and and people can just get to A to B, because that interlinks with the actual underground as well. So it's quite an important area.
So in a way, you're softening it, aren't you, for the people coming through? You're changing aesthetic.
It's almost transitions. You're creating transitions, but at the same time, you're making like gradual transitions that you kind of know where you are in the space as well. And then you're creating the meeting spaces as well. Meet me at the retail area, and then people know where they are, because these spaces are quite huge as well. So it's kind of pinch point in different areas and transition spaces, so people can connect with each other and move through the spaces.
That's a really wicked point, actually. And I was thinking that Waterloo, often when I go to Waterloo, John, the editor, always says, "Meet me under the clock," and that's because it's a focal point, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I guess if you can draw that out with lighting, that's a really nice, subtle way of layering the space in a way.
Yeah, and it's a movement as well in the space as well. If your lighting design can kind of like reflect the movement within the space, almost like the lighting is like the wayfinding in the space as well. So it's not only just the architecture; it's a wayfinding piece as well within itself.
That makes perfect sense. Have you got examples of that you've done, just out of interest?
I mean, again, you see it at Paddington. It's also using the heritage style, but also the lighting there. It's a singular piece of lighting that lights the whole concourse and the platforms. So it kind of takes your confusion, let's say, because you're just using the same type of method of lighting in the space, and that is kind of the wayfinding element. that you're not doing too many, kind of keeping it simple as possible.
Yeah.
I mean, and then you could also say the totems in the tunnels or Crossrail, they've kind of done that throughout the whole tunnel as a wayfinder, and then integrating other elements, signage with it as well.
That sounds. I'm definitely going to check that out, because I haven't. Paddington, is it?
Yeah. So yes, I've spent almost 10 years on Paddington Crossrail, and prior to that, it was a Canary Wharf Crossrail station as well, where actually that was my actual first railway station job that I worked on.
Oh, it's your baby, your first baby.
Yeah, and literally that's where it was like learning the whole typology, understanding the stakeholders, understanding the maintenance. And even if you go onto that station, the concourse and platform have been lit with only two to three types of luminaires, and that's it, all same outputs. And that just helps with the buildability of the projects as well. But then at that time on Canary Wharf, LEDs weren't even available, let's say. They weren't efficient enough.
Those days, when LEDs were just something you found on your Christmas tree. And
yeah, I mean, yeah, the output wasn't still there yet. So it was just at the time where it was getting pushed, let's say. And then you could say the luminaire would cost triple the amount than it is now.
Yeah.
So lighting in the railway has definitely moved a long way now.
I think that's well, it's a brighter future, isn't it? Hopefully, and it's better for the environment as well. And hopefully, we can use the economy savings to produce less carbon, etc.
Well, that's it as well. We need to look at that now as through the design. It's reducing the amount of material luminaires that we're using, reducing maintenance as well. If you can light a station with one type of fitting, then great.
Bob's your uncle.
You've done really well. And then if you could roll that out to other stations as well, then yeah.
I can hear all the manufacturers saying, "Yeah, just use one luminaire and use my luminaire."
Yeah. Well, that's it really. It's again, where's that luminaire coming from as well? It's all the elements of that luminaire, because once the project's finished, it's down to the maintainer. Are they able to replace it? Is the kit available there? Are the LED boards available at the time of when things need to be upgraded? So it's looking at, trying to leave the housing of the luminaire there. You're not throwing the whole thing out. It's just trying to ways of saving cost as well, not only the energy.
Think about maintenance straight up. Right. I think we've covered quite a lot of ground here. So thanks very much, Sacha. Thanks for your time. Thanks.
It's been a pleasure.
Well, it has been long in the making, and it was worth it a while. So thanks very much for taking your time out today, and thanks to you all for tuning in. Be sure to like and whack or gently prod that subscribe button to keep up to date with new content. And thanks again, Sacha. See you all soon.
Cheers.
Peace out.
Bye.